What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cupone here. Everyone loves a good ability, and a nice pairing of the right Pokemon with a proper beneficial passive talent can create perfect synergy to make the Pokemon really stand out. But honestly, one of the best aspects of abilities is getting to choose your favorite one, with most Pokemon having options of at least 2 good abilities, like with Crocodile having either Intimidate or Moxie. But beyond that, in Gen 5, the Dream World introduced Pokemon that were given hidden abilities as well. These abilities require a bit of extra work to obtain, but are generally merited because while hidden abilities are not inherently better, they are often advantageous and indeed rare. Think of Politoed getting Drizzle as its hidden ability when the only other Pokemon to have it was the legendary Kyogre. So hidden abilities are pretty great. However, some Pokemon out there are not allowed to share in this exciting surplus and have no hidden abilities even after a decade of their introduction. So, as per commenter request, let's see if we can fix that by looking at Pokemon like, say, maybe the Honedge line and find out what can be done. Now, right away, I know that Aegislash has no hidden ability, but that's fine because it kind of doesn't work without stance change. So I'll be ignoring Pokemon like that, such as Mimikyu or Castform, that were kind of defined by their abilities and don't really need to be given another one. However, Honedge and Doublade are by no means defined by no guard. It is nice to be able to hit attacks with full accuracy on the field, but why is one of the most popular Pokemon lines in all of Kalos not allowed to have a hidden ability? Now, I should say that I won't be trying to apply these additions from a competitive angle, but we will be considering it from a lore perspective. For instance, a living, or even undead, sword would be a perfect candidate for having the Sharpness ability. This powers up cutting or slicing moves, which the Honedge line just so happened to learn a lot of, so I don't know if it would make them too overpowered, but it just makes sense to apply an attribute to them that they can already do. And remember that it would still be hidden, which means that you would have to do a little something extra to get those sharper specters. Although, to be fair, maybe they thought if Aegislash never has a hidden ability, why bother giving one to its pre-evolutions just for it to disappear anyway? That is some pretty nice logic, but it's also never stopped them before, like with Trapinch. This Desert Ant has the Sheer Force hidden ability, which is pretty good, removing extra effects from attacks like burns or stat drops to increase their power, but when it evolves, regardless of which of the 3 abilities that it has, they will all converge into Levitate. Now, I'm not saying that Vibrava and Flygon don't make sense to have Levitate, but at the same time, why deprive them of a hidden ability when they don't even mind the ground-type damage anyway? I mean, Weezing can lose Levitate and it gets destroyed by ground, so I think it's only fair to maintain the cohesion in the line and give the Dragon Flyers at least one extra ability somewhere. Personally, I would opt for Flygon gaining the Sand Veil ability. Numerous Pokédex entries talk about how the Mystic Pokémon can disappear and hide inside sandstorms, and that is exactly what Sand Veil does, allowing Pokemon to raise their evasion by being obscured in a sandstorm. So that describes Flygon's favorite pastime perfectly, and I don't think it would mind getting touched by ground moves when it could still evade those attacks quite easily. Or hey, the dex also says that Flygon can create those sandstorms, so maybe Sandstream would also fit it as well, but I won't be greedy and we'll just settle for one extra ability. Now, there are large categories of Pokemon without hidden abilities like, say, Ultra Beasts or Paradox Pokemon, and that does make sense to keep them all connected by sharing those attributes, although we could probably look at them individually and find abilities that would make sense for them. But then there are other groups that are equally limited without a real reason why, like the Cocoon Pokemon. I understand that a Chrysalis is restricted on its combat capabilities, however, this is doubly odd since, number 1, their relatives do have hidden abilities. If you look at all of the little worms and butterflies, they readily have options, yet most of the cocoons are stuck with one. I say most because, number 2, some of the cocoons do have hidden abilities, like Swadloon or Whirlipede, who have pretty great ones, so why are the likes of Metapod, Silcoon, and others left out? So while Shedskin does work for this group, I'm here to suggest that for a hidden ability, they could get weak armor instead. This makes it so that when the Pokemon gets hit, their defense lowers but its speed increases. So not only is this thematically fitting with these Pokemon possessing very weak armor, but it plays into their main strategies as well, since the Cocoons are known for spamming Harden to raise their defenses and spewing String Shot to slow down opponents. So if their weak armor was also buffing their speed, and they could offset those defense drops by hardening at the same time, that would be a net gain. Since these cocoons have it bad enough already, let's not make it any harder by confining them to a single ability. Although the same holds true for Pupitar and Johto, so instead I would give it the Sturdy ability, because it doesn't really make sense for even Tyranitar, who is basically synonymous with its ability to have a hidden one, but somehow its pre-evolution Pupitar doesn't. Now, famously, Rotom has the Levitate ability on its regular form, but also on every other machine form on top of that. Now, a ground immunity is pretty great on an electric type, so that's not really a huge deal, except for the fan form. This version of Rotom gains the flying type, which of course is inherently untouched by ground, making Rotom have a useless ability. That is never good, so I highly doubt that they would provide a hidden ability for just one form of a Pokémon and not for the 5 others, but if anyone needs it, it's Rotom Fan. So if I could give a suggestion, I would say that the new ability Wind Power would be perfect. When hit with a wind attack like say an Air Cutter, Heat Wave, or Petal Blizzard, the Pokémon's next electric type move will be powered up. While this was tailor-made for the Wattrel line, I think this seamlessly fits onto the Rotom inhabiting a Wind Turbine, and flawlessly clicks with the electric type that's already there. This seems like the kind of synergy that hidden abilities were made for, so can we please go ahead and get it? Although, if we're talking about Pokemon needing a new ability, I think almost nobody stands out more than the Archeops line. Sure, Slow Start is a very bad ability, but at least Regigigas gets to fall back on being a legendary Pokemon. The Proto-Bird fossil Pokemon has no such advantage, and the argument is, it's so that it wouldn't be too broken in battle. But if you have to hobble your creation so drastically just to use it, that's a very bad design. Just lower some of its stats or move them around. But you know why we're here. Archeops can only have the Defeatist ability, which makes it so that when it gets below half health, its attack stats also get cut in half. Once you're about to die, it just gives up, so it is aptly named, but there are other Pokemon with higher stats that are better balanced. Rampardos has a much higher attack, but they just made him slower and more fragile, so they could have done that for this fellow fossil here, but I guess they just had to keep it so that Archeops is the only Pokemon with a base stat total that matches its national dex number, because that's its whole identity, I suppose. But the thing is, there are other abilities that could keep the defeatist attitude to make it seem wimpy without having the detrimental effects. Like maybe Rattled, where the Pokemon gets scared of Bug, Ghost, and Dark types, and then it gets faster to run away from them. Although maybe not, because the speed seems to be one of the main reasons they decided to nerf it so heavily in the first place. But I think maybe an appropriate substitute could be Wimp Out. Now currently this is the signature ability of Wimpod, but if you want to properly display how feeble Archeops truly is, having an ability call it a Wimp seems like a good way to go. As for whether a free eject button is too much, I don't know, that's not what I'm here to discuss, but Archeops deserves to be like every other fossil, or at the very least like its counterpart from the same region. Now, poor Cryogonal also lacks a hidden ability, being stuck with Levitate. Okay, apparently we need to address the serious overload of Levitate and it being totally uncompromising. I understand that they want to portray these Pokemon floating above the ground, however, there is a great multitude of Pokemon that are airborne without having the explicit ability. One of them being another Ice type from the exact same region, but it somehow gets to have 3 abilities while Cryogonal is stuck with 1. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that Cryogonal should definitely at least get a small chance to have Ice Body. It may not be super original or even beneficial for this jagged hexagon to gain 1/16 of its health when it's hailing, but to be fair, Cryogonal's body is literally made out of ice. It basically is the symbol for the Ice type. So according to the rules, it must have that as a potential ability. And can we please stop constraining all of the Levitate Pokemon so forcefully? Like Misdreavus here. This ghost did just fine in Gen 2 before abilities were a thing, and it somehow survived getting hit by ground. So what could we give this line instead? Well, I'm partial to the Perish Body ability, which makes it so that if the foe touches you, it basically activates a Perish song, and everyone will die in 3 turns. Currently, this is the signature ability of Cursula, but here's the thing, it's still a hidden ability there, on the one Pokemon that can have it. So I don't think that having it spread around a bit more would be be any harm. But this ability works extra well on ghost types since they're immune to trapping and they can easily switch out at any time to avoid KOing themselves. And maybe it's just my associating Misdreavus with Perish Song from the first episodes of Pokemon Chronicles, but it seems oddly fitting to apply this lonely ability to these Midnight Mischief Makers. Now we do have Delmise, who has the signature Steelworker ability, which is really good, and basically gives it a same type attack bonus on steel type moves, effectively making Delmise a triple typed Pokemon. So I get why you probably wouldn't want to lose that, but hey, hidden abilities are a rarity, and maybe some people don't want to focus on using steel-type attacks. But then what trait would fit on Delmise? Well, I'm thinking that Storm Drain would work. This ability draws in any water-type attacks on the field, and it raises their special attack while being immune to said water. It is true that Delmise doesn't need a water immunity, however, since it is stated to need new pieces of debris to maintain itself, I would say that using Storm Drain to draw in water, and any ships that just so happen to be in the way, would be pretty in line for this malevolent sea monster. And of course, Levitate rears its head yet again with dozens of other Pokemon that are denied a hidden ability that we could fix, like maybe giving the Unknown the Magic Guard ability so they would have something more to them, or Carnivine, who only has Levitate because it sometimes hangs from trees, but that's not levitation anyway, so it could easily get away with Gluttony or something else like that. But you know what? I've been kind of hard on Levitate in this video, so I'm gonna do the opposite, and give Levitate as a hidden ability to none other than Gengar. That's right. For those that don't use this Shadow Doppelganger too often, it can be easy to forget that it doesn't have the Levitate ability anymore. Initially, the whole Ghastly line received this ability in Gen 3 to show their propensity for flying through the air, but it actually made a difference here because being half poison makes them ever so grateful to be above their ground weakness. However, in a generational shift, Gengar's ability was changed, presumably because it needed to have another weakness, and that it's typically depicted as actually standing on the ground anyway. But it completely replaced the previous Levitate, so that it still just had the one ability. But I'm saying, why not have at least a chance at both of them? That way this Pokemon wouldn't completely lose touch with the legacy that it's had for a decade, yet still requires a bit of extra effort to obtain that much desired immunity to a critical type. Not that I think Gengar needs to be made better, but it is a travesty that one ability was swapped outright for another, when the majority of Pokemon get to have at least 2 or 3 good options from which to choose. So what hidden abilities would you give to Pokemon that currently don't have any? How would you get rid of Levitate? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded!